and welcome to today's episode of Stand Up. I'm joined by Daivid Rothkopf, who joined me live on YouTube yesterday. If you want to watch it, you can go to youtube.com/standupwithpete. If you want to jump to the conversation, he is one of your favorites. You can do that by fast forwarding or skipping to about an hour in. It takes a while to get there because I played some clips in their full context from Senate hearings yesterday. But I hope you will stay for the headlines and clips. I put a lot of work into collecting, aggregating, editing, and playing these for you. So I've got a lot of it for you coming up. Just want to mention tonight's hangout will be postponed to either Friday or I'll just wait till Monday because I have to move Ava into her new apartment in New York City. She lives in the dorms. And FIT, I was supposed to move her in this morning, but she has to work, and now I'm going to move her in late this afternoon, so I won't be able to host tonight's hangout. I'm so sorry to miss you, but this is a big day for our family and for my daughter, moving into her first New York City apartment, and very excited about having to carry her things up four floors, a 4-floor walk-up. We're moving on up, everybody. Very exciting and looking forward to helping her out. But unfortunately, I will miss tonight's hangout. Hopefully, we'll be able to either reschedule for Friday or you'll see me and we'll hang out on Monday night, this coming Monday. All right. Now, want to thank everybody for all of the feedback lately. Lots of folks writing in to talk about my conversation with Wajahat Ali that I posted earlier this week, talking about the crisis for men and boys in our country and around the world, really. And those conversations have been really landing and resonating with so many of you. My conversation with divorce coach Rachel Sloan a few weeks back. And, of course, I've got more coming up. My friend Don McPherson, former college football and pro football standout. He has been working on these issues for his entire post-athletics career. And I will be talking to the guy who came up with the phrase aspirational masculinity, Don McPherson, on Friday. And I am so happy that these types of segments, interviews, conversations are resonating with so many of you. There's a real dearth and demand for this content, these conversations, especially between men, and I am here for it, and there's a lot more to talk about. So thank you for all the feedback on that and everything else, and now it's time to get to your headlines. All right, let's start with the cuts to Medicaid. Republicans pushed forward with tax and Medicaid cuts. They slogged through a marathon drafting session on their expansive domestic policy bill, haggling over Medicaid and tax cuts as they tried to advance what the tiny Mad King has labeled the one big beautiful bill, carrying his agenda. It looks like a nightmare. And the fact that it's actually named that's what it says at the top of the bill, one big beautiful bill, is so embarrassing and pathetic. The Energy and Commerce Committee was tasked with finding $880 billion in savings over 10 years. Much of it came from cuts to Medicaid spending. Republican plan calls for states to impose work requirements on childless adults, which is inhumane and awful. No other country in the world says you have to work if you want to get health insurance. It's not even necessarily health care. You might not even use it just to qualify for health insurance. Certain exemptions, apparently, puts a stop to a longstanding practice of states levying taxes on health providers to pay for their Medicaid programs and to boost their federal match. It would penalize states that pay for Medicaid for those who entered the country without authorization. It also codifies changes proposed by the Trump administration to shorten the Affordable Care Act's open enrollment period. Because why would you want to make it easy to sign up, and many other provisions. The provisions would result in 10.3 million people losing Medicaid coverage by 2034 and 7.6 million people going uninsured, according to a partial analysis by the Congressional Budget Office. Now, it's got to go to another committee, and then it's got to be voted on by the full House, and that's going to be a while, but I wanted to report, talk, cover it here on the show when there are developments. So there you have it, and we will keep a close eye on it. A struggling technology company that has ties to China and relies on TikTok made an unusual announcement this week. It's called the GD Culture Group, and it announced that it secured funding to buy as much as $300 million in the Trump so-called meme coin that Trump himself has been marketing. This company is a publicly traded firm with a Chinese subsidiary, has only 8 employees, according to its public filings, and recorded 0 revenue last year from an e-commerce business it operates on TikTok. So it's a story to watch to see if that company has any actual money, and will they be able to get what they want out of this fiefdom that Trump and his thugs have created. The Wisconsin judge that was arrested last month, her name is Hannah Duggan. She was accused of helping an undocumented immigrant evade federal agents. She's now been indicted by a federal grand jury yesterday on charges of concealing a person from arrest and obstruction of proceedings. This is chilling, of course. All the experts on authoritarianism are warning that this is the kind of hallmark move you would see in autocratic governments led by dictators and authoritarians. So we're closely watching the case of Judge Hannah Duggan. She's had hundreds of people in the world of law write letters on her behalf. I think it was like 150 bipartisan lawyers and judges writing letters on her behalf, calling this an appalling move. And it is a story that we've got to keep a close eye on. And so I'm glad a lot of media outlets and journalists and activists are doing just that. Got a whole bunch of clips for you from RFK Jr.'s testimony. I'm sorry, it's tough to hear, but I got some good comedy coming up too. Anyway, he was there before Congress, both the House and Senate, for the first time as a Secretary of Health and Human Services. Of course, he's grilled by Democrats and some Republicans about the moves that they're making at HHS. And I've got some full context for you from Senator Maggie Hassan and Senator Chris Murphy that you're going to want to hear, I think. Also, I've got news from Nebraska. How about this? John Ewing Jr. is his name. He won the race for mayor of Omaha, Nebraska. It'll make him the city's first elected black mayor and end a long period of Republican leadership in Omaha. So congratulations to John Ewing Jr. and the Democrats who helped him get elected there. It's going to be interesting to learn more about that race in that city. Got satellite imagery apparently from the India-Pakistan Kashmir region, and it showed that the 4-day military clash apparently did limited damage, whatever that means. I thought it was a headline, and I thought I would mention it here. In Ukraine, in ceasefire negotiations, Russian officials have made extreme demands that do not appear justified by the battlefield situation, according to reporting from the New York Times. And one of the professors that has been abducted because of what he was teaching, apparently, didn't commit a crime, but was disappeared. A federal judge on Wednesday ordered the immediate release of this professor. His name is Badar Khan Suri. He is a postdoctoral fellow at Georgetown University. He was arrested in March after 2 months of detention in an immigration facility in Texas. Unbelievable. The ruling from the bench, Justice Patricia Giles of the Eastern District of Virginia, said the government had declined every opportunity to provide evidence detailing why Mr. Suri, an Indian national, should be detained. She also said it had not identified any past statements he had made that represented a threat to U.S. interests as the government had claimed. That's just crazy. I mean, there's wild things every day, but these students and professors, actual teachers of these prestigious universities being abducted, taken, disappeared because of things that they had said or taught, even if they had said anti-American things. That's the whole idea, that you can do that you can criticize your government. I don't know what to think about it. I think that we need to keep a spotlight on it, and we need to be in the streets for anybody and remember all their names and keep as close a track of any of them as we can. Of course, this is the same thing that happened to that woman that was going to college in New England, or at Tufts, right? Ozturk, and how many others? The case of Mahmoud Khalil, Mohsen Madawi, Mamadou Tal. These are all names of other people who have had similar abductions. So it's really important, I think, to keep an eye on and to keep track of. And I know there are certain websites and journalists that are doing just that, and we should be supporting all of their work. I'm trying to do it, and I thank you for supporting my work. In Israel, they tried again to kill the younger brother of the architect of the October 7th attacks, Mohammed Sinwar. Yava Sinwar was is considered one of Hamas's top military commanders in Gaza, also believed to be among the Hamas officials most opposed to relinquishing the group's arsenal and one of the biggest obstacles to a new ceasefire in Gaza. Well, yesterday Israel tried to kill him in an airstrike. His fate is unknown. Israeli strikes killed dozens of Palestinians in northern Gaza yesterday. The bodies of more than 50 people killed overnight and arrived at the Indonesian hospital in the town of Beit Laya by noon yesterday, according to its director. And hours after Israel was accused of making starvation a bargaining chip in Gaza, its military launched this wave of deadly strikes across the entire enclave. And so, killed, different reports, I'm seeing 50 to 70 people. And so, you know that Trump brought in these white South Africans and says that they were being persecuted and there was a white genocide is the phrase that he and others have been using. Well, one of the white South African refugees that Trump brought in has said Jews are untrustworthy and dangerous. Yeah, people are digging through past statements and social media and learning more about these Afrikaners, as they refer to them. 59 of them arrived at Dulles International Airport. Afrikaners are the white descendants of predominantly Dutch settlers, along with a sizable number of Germans and French folks, French Huguenots, who first came to South Africa in the 17th century. In a video posted by the State Department on social media, Christopher Landau, the Deputy Secretary of State, warmly greeted the refugees, noting many were farmers. So he used this metaphor about good seeds. He said, when you have quality seeds, you can put them in foreign soil and they will blossom. They will bloom. He's talking about white seeds. Just to be clear, this is a hallmark of white supremacy, and he uses the metaphor about good seeds, quality seeds. He's talking about white people. They're taking white people from other countries and bringing them in here while sending brown and black people out at rates we've never seen. I mean, you could not be more overt about it. But anyway, the reporting from the New York Times is about this guy, Charles Kleinhaus. Apparently signed up for the refugee program for, quote, for safety reasons. He intended to move to Buffalo, New York. He was also interviewed by Reuters. He said his life is threatened and people tried to claim his property as their own, but the reporters were unable to verify his account. Well, it did not take long for old Charles Kleinhaus' social media commentary to be discovered in an account on X, the social media platform owned by another South African, Elon Musk. Kleinhaus had posted a steady stream of commentary that is mostly garden variety MAGA, wrote Bulwark's Jonathan Last and Will Summer. Kleinhaus is a staunch supporter of Trump, sharing some of the idealized AI-created content popular among MAGA internet denizens, as well as other posts praising Teslas and guns and bashing vaccines and the woke mind virus. Oh, man, he is a perfect seed. What a great seed. We're bringing in white supremacist, anti-vax people who believe in the woke mind virus that Elon Musk has popularized. But most importantly, reported the Bulwark, old Charlie Kleinhaus, well, he had also posted about Jews and Israel in the kind of way that might get someone who wasn't a white South African deported, calling Jews untrustworthy and dangerous. That would seem to put Kleinhaus crosswise with the Trump administration, which has cited anti-Semitism as a justification for its crackdown on Harvard and other colleges. So he's targeting international students, revoking their student visas, seeking to deport them because they had said something critical of the state of Israel. They bring in old Charlie Kleinhaus. He's a perfect Christian. Look at that. The icon for his avatar for his Twitter account is a crucifix. So it's great. Welcome, Charlie. Welcome to America. Come on in. You seem like a great seed. All right, a lot of that was reporting put together by Sarah Rumpf at Mediaite, who's very good, and I think does a good job at aggregating from different news sources the reporting on something like this or someone like this. And this stupid, horrific white supremacist policy. Nothing could be more overtly pro. We got to get our race started again. KKK, Christian nationalists, scary as hell, super dangerous if you're a non-white for your family. Bullshit. So there you go. That's the way I see it. and I defy anyone to see it otherwise. But by all means, let me know if you disagree. If you're supportive of the white Afrikaner policy, call in now. Give me a call. I'm not live. I wish I were, because I'd love to talk to you. I've got a few questions. All right, well, those are the headlines I've gathered for today, and now it's time to get to the clips. The Clip Show. A great reason to listen to this show is that I aggregate so many of the sound bites from the day and from other times as well. Put them right here together for you, get you updated, informed, inspired, maybe laughing. That's what the Clip Show is supposed to do, and I am very happy that so many of you like it. If you don't like it, tell me what I could do better. Let me know. standupwithpete@gmail.com. All right, let's start with a supercut of right-wing conservative losers even criticizing Trump's grift with the plane from Qatar.
On the jet, though, Mono, I just say this. I think we ought to have a big, beautiful jet, but I'd like it to be made in the United States of America.
Is this good for President Trump? Is it good for his agenda? Is it good for draining the swamp and getting things done? The answer is no, it isn't. It isn't. If you want President Trump to succeed, this kind of skeezy stuff needs to stop.
But obviously, we don't want to be straight up accepting any type of gift from any foreign government, certainly not, one that can be viewed in a way that obviously has been presented here.
There will have to be some kind of adjudication. This has never been done, and it's not like a ride on the plane. We're talking about the entire $400 million plane. I think it's not worth the appearance of impropriety, whether it's improper or not. I don't think it's worth it.
I trust Qatar like I trust a rest stop bathroom.
All right, there you go. That was Senator Hawley, commentator Ben Shapiro. Wonder what he thinks of the white South Africaners that hate Jews, Ben Shapiro. Congressman Mike Lawler, who is my dirty, filthy congressman, Senator Rand Paul, Senator John Kennedy, of course, Louisiana, there at the end on the public restrooms, where I bet he actually spends a lot of time, is all I'm guessing. All right, well, I've got more clips. Here's Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz on CNN talking to John Berman yesterday about all of this stupid scandal and controversy.
Air Doha Don. I mean, I don't know what we're gonna call the plane, but obviously it's ridiculous. Can you imagine just for a second if Barack Obama had accepted a plane from Qatar? My Republican colleagues would be calling it the Barack Hussein plane. Okay? I mean, this is just the height of ridiculousness at the end of the day. Okay? Who gets a plane for $400 million and thinks it's free? Okay, first of all, it's going to cost about $750 million to retrofit the plane. That's number one. Number two is we're taking a plane from a foreign country. Putin's watching this thinking, what do I get Trump? Do I get him a yacht? Do I give him a piece of Ukraine, Trump Island? This is sending all the wrong messages, which is why you're seeing Laura Loomer, Ben Shapiro, Ted Cruz, and a number of my Republican colleagues come out. And the best part of this, the swampiest thing about this entire thing is the person who issued the memo approving the plane literally is a former lobbyist for Qatar. John, you can't make it up.
Oh, Jared Moskowitz with a great rant on CNN. And I shared that on social media, and he thanked me privately in a direct message. I asked him to come on the show. I emailed this guy. I'll have to reach out again to him. Okay, so yesterday RFK Jr. made a fool of himself on Capitol Hill. Man, this guy is so dangerous. He's so bad. He's so dishonest. He's so self-interested. He's delusional as well. I really think that the guy is absolutely disconnected from reality. He's fallen in with a group of people who have affected his thinking. They've certainly fallen in with him as their leader. And I grabbed a few clips, 2 clips, I think, in their entirety in terms of the senator's full Q&A with him, and a couple of partial ones, starting with Bernie Sanders here, who asked the Standard, do you think healthcare is a human right, should be in America?
68,000 people a year die because they don't get to a doctor when they should. Is healthcare a human right? Will you work with us to guarantee healthcare to every man, woman, and child in America?
Well, I think you're asking 2 different questions. You're asking a philosophical question about whether it is a human right, like a constitutional right. As an attorney, I would say that it's not a right of a kind that we otherwise enshrined in the Constitution. Because healthcare costs your neighbor money. If I smoke cigarettes for 20 years, I make that choice, which is my choice.
I don't mean to, I don't have a lot of time, so I am here.
If you're asking me a philosophical question, I got to, give you a thoughtful answer.
Within 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
So, it's not like freedom of speech, which costs, everybody.
But every other country, Mr. Secretary, every other country guarantees health care to all people as a right. Should we, as Americans?
The objective is to get Americans the level of health care that they want, the choice, which Americans want. They don't
want the choice to be uninsured.
Well, but
they don't want the choice to die because they don't get to a doctor on time.
Americans prefer private insurance to other insurance sources.
Everything that he says is nonsense. Everything. The way he makes things up, the way he twists things, the way he manipulates data and public opinion and regurgitates it as a way with a grain of truth and then he gets indignant when you don't buy his argument. He's awful. Though I am getting used to that awful voice as well. All right, here's more. And I understand if you don't want to listen to this because it upsets you so much, then don't. But I think that it's a good exercise for several reasons, which is why I've grabbed it in its entirety to give you the full context and not just 30-second or 1-minute sound bites whenever possible. I mean, obviously, I don't do it for every clip, very few, but I want to give you the full context here. Here's Chris Murphy and his Q&A with the mad theorist RFK Jr., whose father, I hope, is rolling over and over in his grave. Real restless.
Secretary Kennedy, I want to talk to you about your relationship with this committee and this Congress. I want to talk to you about the statements that you made to the chairman of this committee and to members of this committee during your confirmation hearing about vaccines. You didn't tell the truth. I find that to be really dangerous for our relationship. If I were the chairman who believes in vaccines and voted for you because he believed what you said about supporting vaccines, my head would be exploding. In the hearing, you told us, quote, I will not work to impound, divert, or otherwise reduce any funding appropriated by Congress for the purpose of vaccination programs. That's not the truth. You've done exactly. Let me finish my question.
Yeah, I didn't hear what you said. I'm just asking you to repeat it so I can understand your question.
During the hearing, I'll repeat it. During the hearing, you said to this committee and to the Finance Committee, I will not work to impound, divert, or otherwise reduce funding appropriated by Congress for the purpose of vaccination programs. That is not what happened. You've done the opposite. You canceled $12 billion in grants to the states, including my state, that are used to administer and track vaccines. You promised Chairman Cassidy.
When did I do that?
Madam Chair, would you allow me to finish my question?
Keep going with your question.
When did I do that?
Let me finish my question.
Accusation. Just tell me when I did it so I can understand what the question is.
You have canceled $12 billion in public health grants to states, whether you know this or not. That funding is used by the states in part to be able to administer and dispense information about vaccines. Mr. Secretary, let me give you the full panoply of
accusations,
the things you said before this committee that didn't turn out to be true. You also promised Chairman Cassidy that the FDA would not change vaccine standards from, quote, historical norms. But what happened as soon as you were sworn in? You announced new standards for vaccine approvals that you proudly referred to in your own press release as a radical departure from current practice. And experts say that that departure will delay approvals. You also said specific to the measles vaccine that you support the measles vaccine, but you have consistently been undermining the measles vaccine. You told the public that the vaccine wanes very quickly. You went on the Dr. Phil show and said that the measles vaccine was never fully tested for safety. You said there's fetal debris in the measles vaccine. And this morning...
All true.
This morning in front of...
Do you want me to lie to the public?
That's not... None of that is...
Of course it's true. Of course it's true, Senator. You're Senator begging your product. You do not know what you're talking about.
Submit for the record.
Let's have a little bit of order so that you can get your question and we can get
I didn't ask for a response yet.
I understand.
I'd like to lay out the predicate of my question before I'm interrupted by the witness. He should have some respect for this committee.
Go ahead.
Just this morning in front of the House of Representatives, you also said that you, in fact, would not recommend that kids get vaccinated for measles. You said you would just lay out the pros and cons. Okay, so this is the summation of everything that you have said to compromise people's faith in the measles vaccine in particular is contrary to what you said before this committee. You said you support the measles vaccine, but then you have laid out a set of facts that are contested, and I will submit information for the record from experts who contest what you have said about the vaccine. And the result is to undermine faith in the vaccine. It's kind of like saying, listen, I think you should swim in that lake, but, you know, the lake is probably toxic and there's probably a ton of snakes and alligators in that lake, but I think you should swim in it. Nobody's going to swim in that lake if that's what you say. And so I want you to acknowledge that when you say you support the measles vaccine and then go out and repeatedly undermine the vaccine with information that is contested by public health experts, that is not supporting the vaccine. And so I guess I have two simple questions for you. One is, can you clarify what you said in the House this morning? Are you or are you not recommending that families get their children vaccinated, or are you just giving people the pros and cons? And do you understand that when you say these things about the measles vaccine, what ends up happening is less people get the vaccine? That may be what you want, but do you understand that the result of constantly questioning the efficacy or safety of the vaccine results in less people getting the vaccine? So I don't necessarily want to spend the remaining 20 seconds in an argument over the science, but do you at least understand that that's the consequence of what you're saying? And are you actually still recommending people get the vaccine, or are you not?
Senator, if I advised you to swim in a lake that I knew there to be alligators in, wouldn't you want me to tell you there were alligators in it?
So are you recommending the measles vaccine or not?
What I've said and what I said in
doesn't sound like you are. If that's,
are you going to let me answer? Are you going to keep interrupting?
Are you? Or are you not?
Are you going to let me answer? What I pledged before this committee during my confirmation is that I would tell the truth, that I would have radical transparency. I'm going to tell the truth about everything we know and we don't know about vaccines.
Are you recommending the measles vaccine or not?
I am not going to just tell people everything is safe and effective if I know that there's issues. I need to respect people's intelligence.
I think you're answering the question. I think you're
and
answering
the reason
the question. That's really dangerous for the American public and for families.
The reason people have lost faith in this program is because they've been lied to by public officials for year after year after year.
No longer recommending the measles vaccine.
Senator Marshall.
No longer recommending the measles vaccine was the conclusion that he made. All right, well, there you go. I thought that was pretty good by Chris Murphy, and I think this is pretty good by New Hampshire's Maggie Hassan. And also this guy, David Greer, that they talk about, and his father that is now working in the federal government, is such a quack, and you should look into him. But for as long as there have been humans, there have been quack doctors and snake oil salesmen that are the worst of the worst because they sell therapies, drugs, etc., that they know not only do not work, but actually harm and at times kill people throughout human history. These guys seem like those type of guys, no doubt about it. And that's who RFK Jr. trusts. Talks about a lack of trust in American scientists, government, leaders, doctors, etc. Well, I mean... You just got to look this guy up. He's real bad, but here it is with the senator from New Hampshire.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair, and Secretary Kennedy, thank you for being here. I'd like to start by talking about the current measles outbreak, which I know is a concern for all of us here today. 2 children in Texas have tragically died from measles this year, the first children to die from measles in our country in more than 20 years. Measles is almost completely preventable with the measles vaccine. As you know, it's critical that families hear directly and clearly from healthcare leaders about how they can best protect their children. So, Mr. Secretary, I'd like to give you an opportunity to say clearly here today to any parents who are watching that the best way to protect their children from measles is to vaccinate them.
Yeah, I've said that the best way to stop the spread of measles is through vaccination. But I would say this. We have handled this measles outbreak. We get a measles outbreak every year. we've handled this measles outbreak better than any other nation.
What I was interested in, you can say what I asked you to do was to say straight to the camera, as you did on social media, that it is your position that the best way for parents to prevent their kids from getting measles is to vaccinate them. And that is your statement today.
I said that too.
All right. Well, that is great. Thank you. Now, you lead the nation's health department, so let me ask you a couple of questions. Do you think HHS should employ anyone who has endangered the health of children?
No.
You hired David Geyer to lead autism research at HHS, an individual who fraudulently posed as a doctor and gave dangerous medications and medical tests to children with autism. According to the state of Maryland's investigation, David Geyer, who has no medical license or training, gave hormone blocker injections to children with autism who were as young as 8 years old, which the Maryland Board of Medicine said poses a substantial risk of harm. Secretary Kennedy, yes or no, will you fire David Geyer?
First of all, what you're saying is not true. And we did not hire David Geyer to manage autism research at HHS.
So what is his job? What is his job then?
You just said some very defamatory things about a person who, by the way.
So let me just be clear for the record.
Those charges, Senator, I am going to correct the record on this. Let me
tell you what the record says, and then I will hear from you. Last week, when Mr. O'Neill was here in his confirmation hearing, I submitted for the record the charge that the state of Maryland laid out. Now, if you'd like also for me to submit to the record with unanimous consent today, the findings of the state of Maryland, which fined him $10,000 for practicing medicine without a license. He does not have a medical license, and for providing and instructing and giving children hormone blockers. That is what the finding of the Maryland Department, the state of Maryland, its medical licensing board was. And I'll submit that for the record, I hope with unanimous consent.
I'm assuming that you don't know what I'm about to tell you, or you wouldn't say something that was so dishonest. You may or may not know that David Geyer sued the American.
I do know that. I do know that. That doesn't change the findings, nor does it change the experience of the parents who testified.
That finding was reversed by court, and he was awarded $5 million.
That is not true. Now let me ask. So I just want confirmation. David Geyer is still at HHS. I wrote you a letter about this a month ago, and you have not responded.
Well, I apologize for that. That's our bad. And I will respond. But David Geyer is not managing autism research.
So what is his job?
What is
his job at HHS? This is somebody who gave parents the impression that he was a doctor and gave hormone blockers to children as young as 8, telling them that hormone blockers would somehow magically help their kids with autism.
His father
His father is a doctor, but he is not. And his father was not in the room and did not, and he faked his father's signature according to the State Board of Medicine.
And that ruling was overturned by a court. So what you're saying is just wrong. It's just a lie. And the court said that the Maryland Board of Physicians was guilty of actual malice in fabricating those charges against David Geyer.
Well, we will pursue this. And I will submit for the record.
So do you want to know why we brought David Geyer in?
Sure.
Because it wasn't to run autism research. In 2002, the CDC runs a vaccine safety data link, which is supposed to be the vaccine information for the biggest HMOs that are supposed to allow CDC to have a surveillance system for vaccine injury. It's a backstop system. The CDC will not let any physicians in there to look at it or any scientists, independent scientists.
He's neither a scientist nor a physician.
Right. Congress ordered CDC to open it to the Geyers. So they are the only scientists who have ever been in there.
But again, Mr. Geyer is not a scientist. Thank you.
Independent scientists.
Okay, Senator Hassan's time's expired, but before.
All right, there you go. That was Senator Hassan. I thought that was pretty good. I looked up some of the claims that he made, including that they were awarded $5 million. Didn't find anything. Be interested to see what he meant by that. I hope that each senator follows up with many of the lies that he told and asks for evidence of it. he'll just avoid those emails and questions. I would, if the Health and Human Services Secretary was not answering my request for information, I just wait for him. If I were a senator, I just head over to his office. I just keep calling. Like, real quick, I just need the information on that claim you made. Where is that? Just send me a link. I'd like to look into that a little bit deeper. Thank you. All right. Well, here now is Angela Ashbrooks from Maryland, and she is in her first term, and she calls out RFK Jr. for his racism and a little bit more. This one, like the Bernie Sanders, is partial because they get kind of in the weeds, and I want to move on to a couple of other things before I get to my interview with Rothkopf, but I thought this exchange with Senator Angela Ashbrooks and RFK Jr. is real good, and she did what I don't think anybody else did, and tell him he is not qualified for the job that he's in right now. He should not be there. I like it, and I like her.
Senator also Brooks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I'm over here. I've been sitting through this hearing all day today and have noted that you've been unable in most instances to answer any specific questions relating to your agency.
Because I haven't been given time.
Well, no, you have been given time, but the point of the matter is you've been unable to answer specific questions. Sir, you are the wrong person for this job, and you had in this hearing today the unmitigated gall to say at the beginning of your testimony that China is ahead of the United States in healthcare because China does not have DEI.
I didn't say that.
Well, we can roll back the tape. You absolutely did.
And you will find I didn't say that.
That is absolutely what you said.
I was talking about science, and I didn't say they're ahead of us. They're ahead of us in some forms of science, certainly not in healthcare.
Well, we can roll back the tape, but nonetheless, let me go on with my questions and ask you this. You just heard about the Safe to Sleep campaign, and you have made cuts. You made it very clear here today. You have no knowledge whatsoever of the absolutely amazing scientists and researchers who you have callously fired. You know nothing about the cuts.
You didn't fire any working scientists, Senator.
That, sir, is not true either. But nonetheless,
it is true.
It is not true. Let me ask you another specific question. The Safe to Sleep campaign. Well, then can you name, sir, which office the Safe to Sleep campaign operates out of?
The which campaign?
Well, that's the one that the senator just asked you about 2 minutes ago that prevents babies from dying in their sleep. A 30-year program inside your agency. You would agree that it's important.
I think it's part of HRSA or ACF. It's ACF.
No, actually, it's in Health and Human Services.
Yeah.
And I think, and again,
no, they're all within Health and Human Services, but the subdivision is ACF.
No, actually, the name of the
Administration of Children and Families.
No, let me tell you what it is. The National Institute of Child Health and Human Development. This is actually the one that your aunt, Eunice Kennedy Shriver, is the person who it's named after. And you noted just a moment ago, the senator reminded you that although this is a very important agency, prevents babies from dying, this is the same one you fired every single person in this office as of April the 1st. It is also,
as I said, there were no working scientists fired during the RIF.
Yeah, I bet there were. And she challenges him on that. And by the way, Bobby the Buffoon's opening statements were interrupted by protesters in the room. And apparently it was the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee yesterday. And when he started speaking to the committee, protests started with someone shouting, "RFK kills people with AIDS. When Bobby lies, children die. Anti-vax, anti-science, anti-American." And police quickly flooded the room and dragged those people. It really muscled them, too. It really physically dragged them, including Ben Cohen of Ben and Jerry's. He got tossed out as well. After they started screaming at Bobby about the cuts that HHS has made and his feelings on vaccines and stuff, Ben Cohen started screaming about Gaza, and he got tossed out. So it was pretty violent in there at the beginning, but just want to mention that did happen during Bimbo Bobby's opening statement. And one of the big winners from RFK Jr.'s testimony yesterday was the head of the EPA, Lee Zeldin, because his testimony at a Senate committee hearing yesterday didn't get as much attention. He, of course, is the head of the Environmental Protection Agency. He came under bipartisan criticism yesterday over his agency's actions to cancel billions of dollars in congressionally approved spending to address chronic pollution in minority communities and jumpstart clean energy programs across the country, according to the Associated Press. Nearly 800 grants were awarded by the former President Joe Biden's administration under the 2022 climate law, which directed the EPA to spend $3 billion on grants to help low-income and minority communities improve their air and water and protect against climate change. The law allocated another $20 billion under the so-called Green Bank program to finance clean energy and climate-friendly projects nationwide, ostensibly so there wouldn't be more pollution created. See what I'm saying? You got to fix the problem with the current pollution, and then you've got to prevent future pollution so you don't have to pay to fix it again. There's huge savings in that for taxpayers, and obviously it's a lot healthier for humans and the rest of nature. Well, funding for both these programs was abruptly terminated by the Trump administration in actions that Democrats have denounced as illegal and unconstitutional, and a very effective line of questioning, in my opinion, by Senator John Ossoff, Democrat from Georgia. And here is that in its full context yesterday.
Administrator, good to see you and welcome.
Thank you.
Administrator, are you familiar with Thomasville, Georgia?
I don't know. I've been in a lot of parts of Georgia. I was in Georgia about a week and a half ago.
Thomasville's in southwest Georgia. It is a great town known for Southern hospitality, great people, Mayor Mobley, Pastor Rich. There's a lot of agricultural activity around there. There's also a history, a legacy of heavy industry that has led to significant air pollution. And there remain significant concerns about air pollution, specifically particulate matter 2.5, and reported high levels of leukemia and pneumonia in and around Thomasville. And as you know, oftentimes these rural communities don't get the love and attention of the federal government. They can be forgotten. In Georgia, big cities tend to get a lot of the federal support. So there was great news for the good people of Thomasville last year when they won an EPA grant to help build a new health clinic, rehabbing the gym in the school to build a new federally qualified health center near 3 daycare centers, as well as to upgrade wastewater infrastructure. Earl Williams, who leads the Thomasville Community Development Corporation, called the grant a game changer. Mayor Mobley said the award represented a, quote, transformative opportunity to make vital health and safety improvements. But, Administrator, you canceled the grant, and I'd like to know why.
So I'm looking at this was part of the Environmental and Climate Justice Block Grant Program.
That's right.
So and this gets to an earlier interaction that we had, and Senator Rounds got at it as well. When Congress appropriates a block of funding, an administration is going to apply their policy priorities to how that money is going to get spent. A new administration comes in. We still have to spend the appropriated funding unless something changes with
Administrator,
Congress.
with respect, I understand the appropriations process. My question is why you canceled this grant. What is it about building a new health clinic and upgrading wastewater infrastructure for my constituents in Thomasville, Georgia, but it's inconsistent with administration policy?
So I don't have the full grant in front of me. I only have a top line, which program it came out of. So when a new administration comes in and they apply their policy priorities,
You're repeating yourself. My question is why you canceled this grant.
So when a new administration comes in this case, President Trump put out executive orders as it relates to environmental justice with regards to DEI. I would imagine that if we looked at more details.
What does this have to do with is a new health clinic for Thomasville, Georgia woke?
As I imagine, as we look through the details of the particular program, there must be some aspects of this applying the last administration's priorities on environmental justice.
Here's a community that suffered from air pollution, has a high disease burden as a result. Finally, the federal government comes. They're going to help build a health clinic and upgrade some infrastructure. You canceled the grant. Devastating for the community. Here's what the head of the Community Development Corporation said about your decision to cancel this grant, denying my constituents a new health clinic and new wastewater infrastructure, a decision you made that hurts my constituents in Thomasville. Here's what he said, quote, "We all worked so hard for this, and we won. And then all of a sudden, one day, it's gone. And it was just a great sense of disappointment. It was almost like I lost a good friend. He sent me another letter, said, quote, "Our community is devastated. You hurt my constituents, and I don't need a civics lesson on the appropriations process or a broad critique of this program. I want to know why you canceled this grant."
Senator, when you go back to them and ask, well, did you find out why the grant got canceled?
Well, do you know why? I'm asking you. I'm asking you canceled the grant. I don't need to ask them why the grant got canceled because it was your decision. So tell me why you canceled the grant.
You could say I asked the question and then decided to spend the entire 5 minutes cutting him off 8 times in the middle of his first answer, so I was unable to get a full response.
Why don't you answer the question specifically and directly? Why did you cancel this grant? Why are you denying my constituents a new health clinic and new wastewater infrastructure?
Do you want me to repeat anything that I said in the past?
I want you to actually answer the question with specificity and not give a broad critique of this overall program or a lesson on how the appropriations process works.
If you were listening to anything that I said, Senator,
okay, you don't have an answer.
Say whatever you want, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, well, there you go. That's how it sounded yesterday in that committee. And that was just Senator John Ossoff. There were a lot of others. Well, everybody there had a lot to say to the head of the EPA, Lee Zeldin. And now one more clip. I know we're almost an hour in here, and I've still got a few more to go because I want to end with comedy. But this is one of the scarier, more ominous clips that I'll play for you here on the show because it's kind of an amalgam. This is a montage put together or a piece put together by the New York Times. They invited Marcy Shore, Tim Snyder, and Jason Stanley to write an article, and then they made this accompanying video, which I've included the audio from. They are all professors at Yale, historians. They've studied and written extensively on authoritarianism, and they are all moving to Canada to take positions at the University of Toronto. So the New York Times asked all three of them to sit down, and this is what it sounds like. It's terrifying, but don't worry. There's comedy coming up, and we'll connect and talk about it all and get through it all together one way or another. Here it is.
I'm leaving to the University of Toronto because I want to do my work without the fear that I will be punished for my words.
The lesson of 1933 is you get out sooner rather than later.
I've spent a lot of time in the last decade trying to prepare people if Trump were elected once, let alone twice.
Look what happened. Is this crazy?
I did not flee Trump. But if people are going to leave the United States or leave American universities, there are reasons for that. One thing you can definitely learn from Russians
is that it's essential to set up centers of resistance in places of relative safety.
We want to make sure that if there is a political crisis in the U.S., that Americans are organized.
We've just gotten started. You haven't even seen anything yet. It's all just kicking in.
My colleagues and friends, they were walking around and saying, we have checks and balances, so let's inhale, checks and balances, exhale, checks and balances. And I thought, my God, we're like people on the Titanic saying our ship can't sink. We've got the best ship. We've got the strongest ship. We've got the biggest ship. Our ship can't sink. And what you know as a historian is that there is no such thing as a ship that can't sink.
The golden age of America has only just begun.
America has long had an exceptionalist narrative. Fascism can happen elsewhere, but not here.
But talking about American exceptionalism is basically a way to get people to fall into line. If you think that there's this thing out there called America, and it's exceptional, that means that you don't have to do anything. Whatever is happening, it must be freedom. And so then what your definition of freedom is just gets narrowed and narrowed and narrowed and narrowed, and soon you're using the word freedom, but what you're talking about is authoritarianism.
Toni Morrison warned us.
The descent into a final solution is not a jump. It's one step. And then another. And then another.
We are seeing those steps accelerated right now.
There are some words, in Russian in particular, that I feel help us to understand what's happening in the United States, because we now have those phenomena. Произвол. It's the idea that the powers that be can do anything they want to you, and you have no recourse. This not knowing who is next creates a state of paralysis in society.
The Tufts student whose visa was removed because she co-authored an article in the Tufts student newspaper.
I thought, what would I do if guys in masks tried to grab my student? Would I scream? Would I run away? Would I try to pull the mask off? Would I try to videotape the scene? Would I try to pull the guys off of her? Maybe I would get scared and run away. The truth is, I don't know. Not knowing terrified me.
It's a deliberate act of terror. It's not necessary. It's just being done to create a spirit of us and them.
Продажность. It's a word in Russian for corruption, but it's larger than corruption. It refers to a kind of existential state in which not only everything but everyone can be bought or sold.
Critics are calling this a quid pro quo deal between Adams and President Trump.
I'm committed to buying and owning Gaza.
He made $2.5 billion today, and he made $900 million.
There's an expression in Polish. I found myself at the very bottom, and then I heard knocking from below. In Russian, that gets abbreviated to there is no bottom.
We cannot allow a handful of communist radical left judges to obstruct the enforcement of our laws.
What starts to matter is not what is concealed, but what has been normalized. There's no limit to the depravity.
President Trump did not rule out the possibility of a third term.
And the sadism.
The White House released this video titled ASMR, Illegal Alien Deportation Flight.
And the cruelty that we are watching now play out in real time.
This facility is one of the tools in our toolkit that we will use.
You have to continually ask yourself the question, is this okay?
Like him. Yep.
Is there a line I wouldn't cross? Is there something I would not do?
People say, oh, the Democrats should be doing more. They should be fixing things. But if you want the Democrats to do things, you have to create the platform for them. You have to create the spectacle, the pageantry, the positive energy, the physical place where they can come to you.
Poland recently went through a shift towards authoritarianism. Unlike in Russia, unlike in Hungary, the media remained a place in Poland where you could criticize the regime. And as a result, democracy returned.
All right, well, that's just a portion, a part of it, with the scary music and all. We're back. Hi. Yeah, okay? I know. That was upsetting. You should watch the whole thing over at the New York Times. It's titled, We Study Fascism and We're Leaving the U.S. Where you guys going? You guys are leaving? Okay, see you. Take us. No? Yeah. I'm staying. I decided to stay and fight. So I think I can, until I can't continue to do my work. And then I'll do different work, I think. I'll still stay and I'll still fight. I'll just do it differently. That's my plan, at least. All right. Well, look into all their work, by the way. Marcy Shore, Tim Snyder, of course. Jason Stanley has been on the show a couple times, and I'll have to get him back. He's a philosophy professor at Yale who wrote How Fascism Works. Really good. Well done by the New York Times. All right, let's get to those jokes, those laughs. Hurry. Let's get to them. Let's start with Jordan Klepper, who was in the anchor chair at The Daily Show last night.
Now, today, Trump's visit to the Middle East brought him to Qatar. It's also acceptable to say Qatar. However, Keytar is not acceptable under any circumstances. Pick an instrument, you synth pop coward. Now, yesterday, Saudi Arabia greeted Trump with horses. And today, Qatar said, oh, you think that's cool? How about horses and camels and motherfucking sword dancers? Yeah, whoa! That puts a lot of pressure on his trip tomorrow to the UAE. I bet they're sweating right now. You know, we're just going to give them an edible arrangement. What the are we going to do? Whew. Of course, Qatar didn't just give him a sword dance show. They also offered him a $400 million luxury jumbo jet. Now, this plane has become a huge controversy. It's a security risk. The optics are terrible. It's clearly unconstitutional. So you got to wonder, why does Trump want it so bad?
And, you know, these planes, the plane that you're on right now is almost 40 years old. And when you land and you see Saudi Arabia and you see UAE and you see Qatar and you see all these, and they have these brand new Boeing 747s mostly, and you see ours next to it, it's much smaller, it's much less impressive. I believe that we should have the most impressive plane.
We still talking about planes? Look, we're on the tarmac next to each other, you know. I know you're not supposed to just look straight ahead, but so I took a little peek over there, a little peek over there. Cockpit was huge, man. Oh, honestly, it's getting a little embarrassing watching Trump fly around the Middle East getting sword dances and free jets. I mean, is he going to do any actual policy stuff?
I will be ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance at greatness.
Well, you know what? I spoke too soon. This seems like maybe actually a good idea. You know, Syria has just thrown off decades of dictatorship, and Trump thinks the new government deserves a chance to find its feet free of U.S. sanctions. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was wrong about this guy. You know, he doesn't just think about himself.
Syria's new president, Ahmed al-Shara, reportedly offered to build a Trump Tower in Damascus.
God damn it! God damn it! I spoke too soon about speaking too soon!
Yeah, good stuff from Jordan Klepper and The Daily Show. Let's head over to Seth Meyers on NBC's Late Night with Seth Meyers.
You might recall that when Joe Biden was president, Republicans were very concerned about government ethics. They held hearings, press conferences. Donald Trump even went so far as to teach an entire course on ethics at Oberlin. Lightly attended. Republicans were very uncomfortable with the possibility that the president, through his family, might have received money from foreign governments.
The Biden family and their business associates received $20 million in payments from foreign actors in places like Russia, China, Ukraine, and Romania.
More than $20 million went to Joe Biden's family, paid by Ukrainians and Russians and Kazakhs and Chinese communists.
He used the power of his office as the vice president of this country to secure massive amounts of money for his own family.
What exactly did the Bidens do to receive the millions and millions of dollars from our enemies around the world?
We don't like corrupt politicians like Joe Biden. You see, they just found him $5 billion went to him.
$5 billion? I think we would have noticed if Scranton Joe had suddenly become a multi-billionaire. I don't remember seeing a blinged out Amtrak called Track Force One. The Hunter Biden fanfic got so bizarre, Republicans started claiming they were actually jealous of him.
Imagine if that was your name was Hunter Biden. Except
I wish my name was Hunter Biden. I could go abroad, make millions off of my father's presidency. I'd be a really rich guy. It would be incredible.
I wish my name was Hunter Biden, because then I'd be a really rich guy, and I'd go abroad and make millions of dollars, and then I'd come home, and my father would put his hand on my shoulder and say, "Welcome home, bub." And we'd talk, and we'd hug, and he'd ask about my life, and then he said, "I'm proud of you, son." And, I'm sorry, Sean. Here come the waterworks. Joe Biden loves his up, son. I wish I was Hunter. Of course, the one element missing from these allegations was something called proof, although they kept insisting it would come eventually.
You've made a couple of comments this morning. You said money laundering. You said bribery. You said influence peddling. Obviously, Mr. Chairman, these are very, very serious charges, and the White House is denying it. How will you prove it?
Yeah. Well, we're going to present the American people with a report, hopefully very soon. And there are going to be a lot of footnotes in this report.
It is true. There were lots of footnotes, although if you zoom in on those footnotes, they say, we didn't think you were actually going to read these. But the accusations were never straightforward. The proof was always vague and circuitous and presented via complicated flowcharts or a copy of a check from James Biden to his brother Joe Biden from when Joe was a private citizen that was clearly labeled loan repayment on the memo line. I think Republicans were just shocked by the news that a president could be generous enough to loan someone money. I mean, can you imagine Trump helping someone like that? Rudy Giuliani did actual work for Trump, and Rudy is still bankrupt. The other day, I saw Rudy on the F train begging Pizza Rat for money. At least give me a bite of your pizza. I'm not worried about rabies. I already have it. You'll probably get rabies from me.
Yeah, you need some of the images on that, but I thought it was pretty funny. Really good stuff from Seth Meyers. Finally, let's check in at CBS Late Show with Stephen Colbert.
If you watch the show on a regular basis, you know I stand up here every ding-dang night. And I get all frothed up about all the upsetting things this government is doing, ignoring the Supreme Court, using the Constitution as a pre-moistened pine fresh dude wipe. But if I've learned one thing from this administration is that sometimes you just got to tune out the noise and do something just for you, like accepting a free bribe jet from Qatar. You know? A little me time. Today, Trump visited that country as part of his Mideast all-you-can-grift carnival cash cruise. And when he arrived, his motorcade was greeted by riders on ceremonial camels. Oh, the Qataris know the way to Trump's heart. Bribes and humps. My humps. Those lovely camel lumps. Trump met with the Qatari emir, and he praised all the Gulf razzle-dazzle.
What a beautiful place, and we appreciate those camels, and the job you've done is second to none. You look at this, it's so beautiful. As a construction person, I'm seeing perfect marble. This is what they call perfecto.
His brain is what they call clam chowder. The Qataris have got to be shocked at this point at how little it takes to impress him. Why did we give him a whole jet? We could have bribed him with a box of Ferrero Rocher. Also, Jim, can we get one more close-up look at Trump's face bronzing job? Dear Lord, there's a whole lot of uncooked chicken around the ear. That line, look at that little line is there. It's so sharp you can see where they put the painter's tape. On his, he just puts on the tape, takes the bronzer and throws it into a fan and stands in front of it.
All right, there you go. How about that? Did that make you feel a little better? Made me feel better. So thank you very much for enjoying the 1 hour. Was that a lot? Was it just too much? I don't know. I put so much work into it, and I always wonder if people listen to the whole thing or any of it. How many of you listen to it every day? Should I be getting up really early and doing this? I really question it. So it's always great to hear feedback, specifically on the news segment, which takes a lot. It's a lot of keystrokes. It's a lot of time. And I love doing it. I enjoy doing it, but I just want it to be worthwhile. Those are the clips and headlines that I've gathered for you. And now it's time to get to my conversation with Daivid Rothkopf. You should listen to him every day on Deep State Radio. He's got a whole platform, a whole network, Deep State Radio Network, where he produces several podcasts that you should absolutely check out. You should follow him on Blue Sky. You should subscribe to his Substack, The Need to Know. Substack.com, and read him at the Daily Beast. He also contributes to many other outlets. He's written over 10 books. He's very smart. We always love when he joins the conversation. Today is no exception. Let's do it right now with Daivid Rothkopf, who I edited a little bit off of the top of our conversation. We were just shooting the shit. You can watch it all on youtube.com/standupwithpete. Do it. You're a Washington insider. Have you ever gone for a swim in Rock State Creek Park or whatever that is? Where RFK.
What an idiot. Yeah, everybody who lives in Washington knows you can't swim in there because it's like full of shit. But
like him,
so's RFK Jr.
Yep.
He's completely full of shit. And it's almost as though he's drawn to things which will cause disease and kill us. It's not almost as if. He actually is.
Yeah.
And it's like the idea that he is the senior person responsible for our nation's health, when he conceivably, other than, maybe, a single, like an Ebola virus cell, is the worst creature that could be in charge of our health. It's astonishing. And every week, he was in front of the Congress today. And somebody said, well, would you recommend people get the polio vaccine? It's like, well, I don't want to
I think I saw that clip. I think it was the measles, MMR.
No, it was measles and polio.
Oh, he said this.
And chicken pox. It was a whole bunch.
in the clip,
he was asked a series of
in one clip that I saw, we could take any one of them because it's an important question. He was asked, if you had children now, that were babies, would you have them vaccinated? And he said, people shouldn't, I don't know. I'm not an expert. People shouldn't listen to me for medical advice. You do not have to be a physician to be the head of Health and Human Services or in the past, or much less the Surgeon General. But on a question as simple as that, I think you would be in a comfortable place to say the consensus of the people that I have access to, which is the best experts in the world, is that, of course, you should get your kids vaccinated at that age. He says,
of course. But first of all, let's think of the science involved here, where there's kind of 200 years of science behind this. It's a little bit like saying, where do you come out on gravity? It's like, I don't want to give an opinion. I know we're kind of stuck to the earth, and when I drop stuff, it falls. But I think people should come up with their own conclusions about why shit keeps falling on the floor. And it's like, this is insane. But that's where he is. And by the way, behind the scenes, what's he doing? What's he doing? He is canceling programs that support science. He's supporting programs that oppose science. He's doing stuff all the time that is the institutionalization of his twisted views. So of course he's offering his opinion. He just doesn't want to say it, in front of a Senate committee, because, he might look like an extremist nut job with a worm that's eaten his brain.
You have been writing a lot at your Substack and the Daily Beast, and I don't know if I missed anything, but everybody should, I'll link to it in the show notes. Everybody should be reading Rothkopf. We love reading Daivid Rothkopf. Let's talk a little bit about the Middle East. There's a lot to say in terms of what's going on with Gaza, but specifically, and you've written about that recently, I wanted to ask you about our tiny Mad King's big first international trip. Usually a president goes to Canada or England or something, but again, he went to Saudi Arabia, and then he met with the Syrian president. Did you know that the Syrian president, I just read this today, he was captured by U.S. forces in Iraq when he was a young man. He was fighting for al-Qaeda in Iraq in 2006. U.S. forces captured and put him in prison for 5 years. He's now the president of Syria. Trump's there shaking his hand, standing next to the Saudi Arabian president. If Obama done that, whoo. But what do you make of this trip and the what's being negotiated before we even, or include if you want to talk about the big plane that apparently Qatar couldn't unload to anybody? They've been trying to sell it for years. I think I might have seen that in your timeline.
They have been. In fact, I think your friend Michael Ian Black said that we are being cars for kids on this plane because they couldn't sell it.
That's amazing.
And they're like unloading. They're unloading it on us, which it's kind of brilliant to invoke the most annoying ad on television.
That's
anyway. Let's set that aside for a second. I want to say one thing as a preface to this. As you know, I have a company. We produce a lot of podcasts, and we do a couple on AI. And the Embassy of the United Arab Emirates sponsors those podcasts. And as a result, we have to file that we are under FARA. Nobody, this administration doesn't enforce that, but we follow the letter of the law. And if you take money from a foreign government, you have to do that. It says in our filing, we don't lobby and we don't, get involved, and they don't get involved in the editorial of the podcast. But before I offer an opinion on a trip to the Gulf, I want to say this because then people can say, well, he's full of shit or he's co-opted or whatever. And it's just important for me to say it. I think this trip is a mixed bag. Trump went on his first trip to the region last time around. He likes it there. He likes being feted. He likes hanging around with people who are kings and princes. His family has a lot of ties there. And I think you need to break it down. From the point of view of, is the Trump presidency possibly compromised by the financial involvement of Trump enterprises in places like this or gifts like airplanes, I think we need to scrutinize that extremely carefully because I think, Trump is arguably the most corrupt president in our history. And, his crypto schemes and his, Truth Social is just a racket, right? It doesn't make any money, but people can put money in it. Or his NFTs that show him shirtless but with rippling muscles, or his, all this stuff. It's all the swag. He put out pink MAGA hats for Mother's Day. It's all super corrupt, right? And I think, there are elements of that as an undercurrent on this trip that we need to look at carefully. And the plane is egregious. I mean, it's now being reported that the plane, not only have they been trying to sell it unsuccessfully, and thus they're unloading something on us that they couldn't sell otherwise, but the plane will cost over $1 billion to retrofit to be secure and be suitable for Air Force One.
And take forever.
And that'll take 2 years.
Yeah, it'll take forever. So, but he might not even.
Pardon me? Yeah, it'll take forever. So 2 years from now, they're done doing it. And what happens? Trump has got a year left in office, and then he takes the plane. It goes to his foundation. All of a sudden, he's got this super plane. The Qatar has put in it, the value of the plane, $400 million. The U.S. government's put $1 billion into the plane. And he goes and flies around with it, or at least that's his intention. So that's, everybody, right wing, left wing, everybody thinks that's corrupt because it's overtly corrupt. I mean, when I was in the government, you couldn't have somebody buy you a sandwich that cost more than $20. And I know people who take this kind of thing very seriously, and I wish the president did. Now, having said all of that, I want to say some uncharacteristically positive things about Trump.
Go ahead. Wow.
First of all, should he meet with this Syrian guy, who was in Al-Qaeda until recently was on a terrorist list, and I think there was a $10 million bounty on his head? Sure, why not? The Syrian revolution got rid of Bashar al-Assad. Rebuilding Syria is in the interest of everybody in the region. And being open to change and acknowledging that change can happen is a reasonable thing. And, after all, Menachem Begin was a terrorist. A lot of the people who founded Israel were terrorists. I'm not saying we should embrace Al-Qaeda people. I'm just saying, net, let's have an open mind about it. And, maybe it's a mistake. Maybe it's not a mistake. But I'm not immediately turned off by that. I think his general view of having the U.S. be less involved in the region and having regional countries be more involved, kind of net positive. I agree with that. Certainly the U.S. has not been successful in its involvement in the region. I think the fact that he is already, after 4 months, frustrated by Netanyahu, and that, we're in the bizarre situation that America's extreme right wing finds Israel's extreme right wing to be too extreme. That's kind of weird. And, Netanyahu sort of comes up short on this trip. Does that mean Trump's position on Gaza, is a good position? Heck no. Gaza is genocide. What Netanyahu is doing is genocide. The Biden administration was wrong about it. Trump is even wronger about it. Turning it all into a casino is ridiculous. But, distancing themselves from Netanyahu, I can't object to that. One of the reasons that I can't object to it is Netanyahu wants to go to war with Iran. And I think with Iran, there is a possibility for a variety of reasons, complicated reasons, because some of them have to do with Israel defeating a bunch of Iranian proxies. Iran is ready to do a deal on nukes. Of course, we had a deal called the JCPOA, and Trump got us out of it, which was a huge mistake. But as he's done with, lots of other deals, he likes blowing up a deal, then going back, renegotiating the deal, and taking credit for it. Look at NAFTA and the U.S. MCA.
Right.
So, the idea that Trump is open to a deal with Iran, that might stop their nuclear program. Net, I think we should look kind of positively on that. And so and the final thing that I would say that's kind of positive about it, and I know this is not why, you turn to one of Trump's most egregious critics. And I say this with all the caveats up front so people can make their own judgment about this. But, Trump started out, first couple of weeks, he announced a bunch of deals from companies and so forth, saying, we're going to invest in the U.S. And, what percentage of deals were bullshit? A high percent. But, it was Trump, the huckster, being a promoter, going out, getting deals because it would create jobs. I thought that was working pretty well for him. Then he takes a hard turn, does this tariff stuff.
Yeah.
And the tariffs were a friggin' disaster, brought the global economy to the edge of recession. We still don't know what's going to happen. It's certainly not going to do any of the things that he said it was going to do, bringing back jobs, helping the U.S. economy, strengthening the U.S., and it won't do any of that stuff. He's now backing off of it. Xi Jinping stared him straight in the eye, and Trump started to cry. We've got a big reversal on that. I think it's been a disaster. Liberation Day should be called Humiliation Day. But having said that, he's now on a trip, going back to the old thing, where they're signing a lot of deals. Some of these, Qatar buying a lot of Boeing aircraft or GE engines, good. Is it just as good to give the Saudis tons of military equipment? I don't know. We can debate that. But at least it's a useful pursuit for Trump that is not entirely corrupt and is time that he is not spending trying to destroy our fundamental freedoms, our institutions, manifesting racism, doing all the things, destroying our healthcare system, destroying science in the United States, destroying our immigration system, making people not want to come to our country. Compared to all the other stuff he's done, net, not bad. Just like net, last time around, he did the Abraham Accords, which led us a little closer to peace. That wasn't terrible. Weirdly, for reasons that I think are not entirely wholesome, not founded in great foreign policy thinking, not led by real geniuses, first term Jared, second term Steve Witkoff. I think this isn't the worst week Trump's had. I think there's been some net positives. I'm sorry, that's not why you brought me here, but I just want to share that.
I appreciate your candor, your efforts to try to split the hair or many hairs as to what happened this week in the on this trip, but yet you have a piece, I believe the latest thing that you've written for the Daily Beast, is Trump out of touch, senile, nuts, or something worse? I feel like a lot of what you just talked about that could be seen as good or accomplishments had more to do with the administration and outside forces wanting to make these certain deals and investments in that part of the world, which is, I suppose you could say, opened up more to those deals. But at the same time, he's still a mad king, and we don't know exactly sure.
No question.
What he
No question. We would be better off if he weren't the president of the United States. We would be better off if his party were not in power. He is profoundly ignorant on some things. He takes, perverse anti-science views, anti-healthcare medicine views. He's a racist. His views on immigration, are manifest this week as we're letting in so-called white South African refugees. And a senior Trump official said, well, we'd like people coming to this country who can fit in. I mean, it was disgusting, and that's bad. So, so corrupt and he's ignorant and ill-informed. He's got bad advisors around him. And occasionally he's doing stuff, picking RFK Jr., listening to Laura Loomer, taking a hard line on this jet from Qatar, turning the whole Oval Office into, looking like some, bordello from, Las Vegas.
Yeah.
All this other stuff. It's crazy. It is Mad King stuff. Having cabinet meetings where everybody must, fall to their knees in front of them. It's kind of like Succession bore on the floor, or it's like, any meeting of the people around Kim Jong-un. So there's a lot of insanity around Trump. And on top of all of that, I've talked to people in the administration, I mentioned that in this article, who said, oh, yeah, he's lost a step. And, he's just not what he was. And I think, a couple of weeks ago, we heard from Trump the good news. And, of course, I don't believe anything he says, but we heard him say, I'm not running for re-election. And I think that means he's just going to spend the next 3 years basking in being president and trying to monetize the office, or let his sons monetize the office in every way that he can, so that he finishes. I mean, he's already made like $4 billion in the past 4 months on this ridiculous crypto scam. And he's making money on Truth Social, and he's making money, people are giving him airplanes. So I think that's what we're going to see from him. The question is whether that distracts him from the really destructive business that people like Stephen Miller and Russell Vaught and the others around him are trying to promote, which involves destroying our institutions, destroying our basic freedoms, making us less of a democracy. I personally think he's going to let that continue. I think that's too, that's of existential level importance to the United States. And that's why none of his potentially net positive moves do anything in the way of moving the needle from the red danger zone that it is with him ever since he's gotten back into office.
They've walked back these tariffs, caved on China, but they're still going to be impactful. The 30% on China, 10% on several other countries.
Yeah,
it still matters.
No, it's inflationary, and he's still pushing through tax cuts that primarily benefit the rich, and trying to pay for them with Medicaid cuts. And I saw some kind of a graphic yesterday that indicated that there was not one single congressional district in the United States where more than 15% of the people supported cutting Medicaid.
Right.
So some of this stuff is crazy. That's crazy. Wanting to cut Medicaid is crazy. And I don't think he's going to go forward with that. And I think there's a decent chance that this big, beautiful bill doesn't happen, or is watered down, or ends up being a series of continuing resolutions, because too much of it is a suicide note for the Republican Party, for a lot of the people to sign on to.
I'm in Lawler's district here, where they carried that woman out. They almost carried me out the week before at a similar town hall, and he's cooked because of what people perceive he's going to do to Medicaid. I mean, you could close down entire hospitals.
Well, as they say in my part of New Jersey, sei gesund. Let's, go in good health. Goodbye, Mike Lawler. The sooner he's gone, the better.
Speaking of Italian Catholics, what do you think of this? What do you think of this new Pope? Did you hear about his brother, as I call him, Sweet Lou, his crazy brother, his right-wing brother who lives in Florida? It's just on Facebook calling Nancy Pelosi a C and spreading conspiracy. Yeah, I'm way more interested in his crazy crank right-wing brother than I am in him, just to be.
Look, there have been a lot of crazy crank right-wing brothers out there on both parties, or nuts.
But this guy's the best. He's really
he's a mess, and I suspect that somebody's going to prevail on him to shut up. I'm a Jewish boy from New Jersey. I don't know that commenting on popes is really my thing, but I do think this.
You tweeted about the Pope. I saw you tweet about the Pope, or post about the Pope.
But I keep it to a minimum. But here's the thing: A, I found the whole thing fascinating.
Yeah.
B, a pope that likes the Chicago White Sox and, that kind of, I can't help but like that. It's very entertaining. C, clearly the cardinals were sending a message on issues like refugees, the environment stuff. No, there's no pope who's like a liberal, right? But they do care about disadvantaged people, at least ostensibly. And I think in the case of Francis and in the case of Leo XIV, they do. And I think that sends a strong message to people like Trump, who Cardinal Prevost has commented on in the past. And I think that's encouraging. I also think in my latest Daily Beast piece, which will be up later today at some point, talks about how Trump is no longer the most powerful man in the world. The president's no longer the most powerful man in the world. He's probably not in the top 25, but he's also not the most powerful man in the United States anymore, because that's the Pope. The Pope has 1 billion followers, and the Pope competes on a landscape that Trump can't even enter, which is ethics and morality. And so, I think he is consequential, and I think there are a lot of American voters, Catholics and non-Catholics, who it will resonate with when on issues like immigration or poor people or humility or war and peace or the environment, or so, where he takes a stand that reveals the flaws in Trump administration policy.
All right, I'll let you go. But before I do, I just got to ask you what you think of this book that Jake Tapper wrote with this guy from Axios. I forget his name. Alex? Who is it? And
Thompson. Alex Thompson. Yeah.
It's getting a lot of attention, the book, and I don't know. A lot of people seem upset that it's getting any attention in mainstream media, at least, because we shouldn't be talking about that today. It just doesn't rank.
I couldn't disagree more.
Go ahead.
And I know this won't be popular with a lot of your extreme left communist listeners, but and by the way, I'm joking. I am like as socialist and extreme left as anybody as there is out there. But having said that, the cover up of Joe Biden's decline is a big story, and it's a big story for a bunch of reasons. Not to beat up on Joe Biden. He was a good president. He did some good things. It's a big story because if he had left, as he indicated a long time ago that he was going to, and announced his departure 2 years in, the Democrats would have had a much better chance of losing. They just barely lost. If the candidate to succeed him was Kamala Harris, as I know some people don't agree, but I think she would have been the candidate to defeat him. Where right now we would be sitting there and we wouldn't be having a bunch of the discussions we're having, like, oh, the Democrats have got to be more Trump-like to win. Well, no. We would be having discussions about how Biden and Harris and so forth, because they won by a slight percentage, had triumphed. Neoliberalism was over. MAGA was over. America had come to its senses. And the difference between having one set of discussions and the other is the outcome of the election. And so if something happened that could have influenced the outcome of the election in a way that perverted the general direction of American politics, we need to know about it. Also, I knew scores of people in the Biden administration. I've talked to scores of people in the Biden administration since they left office. Everybody knew this was an issue. There were a tiny group of people around Biden who, for reasons, whether it's loyalty to Biden or their own self-interest, because being close to Biden, they therefore had power, which they would lose, they protected him. They thought they were protecting him, and they weren't. They were not protecting him, because this will follow him till his dying day and thereafter. It was the wrong decision. It was a selfish decision. It had huge negative consequences for the United States. He had no business thinking of running again. And I say that with huge admiration for the people around him and huge admiration for a lot of what he achieved, a special appreciation for his rejection of neoliberalism and focus on things like jobs and people in the middle class and doing things in a way where we prioritize them over Wall Street, more power to him. Bad Gaza policy. Too hesitant on Ukraine. But, the thing that will linger for the United States is the fact that he didn't leave office when he should have announced he was leaving office.
There you go. You heard it from Rothkopf. That's the final word, I think, on it. We don't need to talk about it.
It could be. Between half the things I've said, your viewers may be writing into you saying, enough with this guy.
No, you'll see him appearing on Jake Tapper's show next, I'm sure.
No, I had a falling out with Jake Tapper. I
did?
think it's super unlikely.
Public?
Long time ago.
Public?
Not public. I mean, who gives a shit what I am, but me. But once I was on a show a lot, and then I said something that was a little critical, and all of a sudden I wasn't on the show anymore.
Wow, we'll see if that changes.
Go figure. I've said horrible things to your face, and you keep inviting me back.
Yeah, I don't have the same ego.
You don't hold a grudge.
No, I mean I'm for truth and comedy. That's where I stand. I don't care who gets hurt.
That's the secret of comedy. The reason comedy is so healing is that if you believe in comedy and you worship the comedy gods, if it's funny, it doesn't matter what you're saying, right? And so long as nobody gets hurt, or much.
Well,
even if they're hurt a little, it's okay.
People can get hurt from comedy. Groups of people can feel hurt. Individuals can feel hurt as well. But I try to tell people if it's meant to be a joke. I mean, the most important rule for, I think, a comedian with integrity, God knows there's a lot of comedians who people respect and are very funny, like Artie Lang, who don't like being made fun of. They don't like being the butt of jokes. I mean, I sat around that table how many times at the Comedy Cellar and every other comedy club, and you can tell which guys don't like the joke to be on them. And not only comedians, just
Jerry Seinfeld. Oh, sorry, I don't want to.
He would be at the table now. He would not mind at all if a joke was funny if it was at his expense. He gets it. Yeah.
Well, recently, politically, he's been a little more sensitive. But look, here's the thing. We're all going to die. We all face oblivion. If somebody can make you laugh despite the fact that you face oblivion, more power to them.
Well said, and a great way to end it. Thank you very, very much for joining me, sir.
Thank you.
All right, there you go. Daivid Rothkopf. Go follow him on Blue Sky. Let him know that you heard him here. And also subscribe to his Substack. Listen to his podcast. Support him all the ways that you want to and can. That's all I've got for you. Again, no hangout tonight because I'm moving Ava into her apartment. But let you know if I can reschedule for tomorrow or at some other point. Definitely see you on Monday. That's all I've got. Thank you very much for joining me here all the way at the end, you bumblebees. Very, very grateful. John Carroll has a new album out. Go order it if you have it. JohnCarroll.org right now. Be the change you want to see in the world and follow the wolf that is not yelling at you in your mind. Try to do good things. Try to be a good person. That's the end. All right.
Knees, you gotta stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. You got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence.